a person's servitude becomes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the higher Allah ta'ala takes him. So the Prophet ﷺ was the most complete and perfect slave of Allah. He lowered himself the most in front of Allah. Allah ta'ala took him to the highest of heights. Then there is mention of a decree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had passed to Bani Israel. قَضَيْنَا إِلَى Bani Israel. We informed Bani Israel, or we made a decision for Bani Israel. And this decision was passed on to them by numerous prophets that were sent to them. And when the biblical scriptures are picked up, one finds many passages in the book of prophets and in numerous passages where the prophets are telling Bani Israel that this is going to happen. So that was given to them in their scriptures, in their books as well. لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ. You're going to cause strife and trouble in the world twice. And وَلَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًا كَبِيرًا. This has two meanings. One is you will achieve great heights, or you will act extremely arrogantly. So the first time that you will do this, you will cause this corruption and you will become basically obstinate and you will become arrogant and stubborn. The first time this will happen, بَعَثْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ عِبَادًا لَنَا أُولِي بَأْسٍ شَدِيدٍ. We will send some slaves of ours to you who are very powerful, and their grip and their punishment is very severe. فَجَاسُوا خِلَالَ الدِّيَارِ. They're going to penetrate all of your regions. And this is a promise that is sure to take place. Then we will give you the upper hand once again, and we will assist you with wealth and with children, with offspring, and we will increase your numbers. If you continue to do good, it will be for your own benefit. If you turn bad, again, it's going to be of detriment only to yourselves. When that second promise comes, then these people are going to disfigure your faces. They will enter into the masjid, meaning Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, that region, like they entered it the first time, and they will destroy everything that they gain hold of. So what are these two events referring to? Regarding this, there are many historical researches and many historical possibilities that are presented by the scholars of tafsir and hadith, as well as history. So there are 6 possibilities. There are 6 major occasions when Bayt al-Maqdis was destroyed and Bani Israel was expelled and banished from that area. Of them, 2 are being mentioned over here. Now, which 2 are they? There is a slight difference of opinion. Some scholars are of the opinion that the first time that is being mentioned was after Musa alayhi salam, when Jalut, Goliath, had taken control of that whole area, and he had basically, along with the idol worshipping tribes that Bani Israel had refused to fight and refused to drive out or bring to their religion, in support of those tribes, he had basically driven them out. And they were disgraced, they were stripped of their wealth, of their property, and on their children. And later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the upper hand through the king Talut, Saul, and then Dawood alayhi salam, and then Sulaiman alayhi salam. These 3 kings ruled in succession, and this is what is being referred to as that time of peace, the upper hand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them. It was after Jalut. And Bani Israel mentioned this to their prophet when they said, وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُقَاتِلَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا وَأَبْنَائِنَا. Why won't we fight now? They said, give us a king, give us a prophet so we can appoint a king, or give us they said to their prophet, appoint to us a king so we can fight. He can regroup us. He said, what? We know your history. You're not people to fight. They said, no, we have nothing to lose. We've already lost everything. So it tells us that they have been expelled from their lands, and min abna'ina, they have been deprived of their children, probably because their children were taken away from them and enslaved, or they were killed in front of them. So that was the first occasion, and the second occasion being after Sulaiman alayhi salam, when Bani Israel again turned towards shirk, idol worshipping, and so on and so forth. And a man by the name of Bukht Nasr, Nebuchadnezzar in English, he came and wiped them out, completely annihilated them and killed them, and basically had the whole region burned and destroyed right to the ground, flattened. Those who were not killed were expelled. They were sent off to different parts of the land. They were scattered everywhere. So some historians have said that these are the two occasions that are being referred to. Others say that the first occasion that's being mentioned is the event of Nebuchadnezzar, when he came in and he drove them all out and he caused a lot of destruction. And the second is when King Titus, um, who was a Roman, he was the son of a Roman emperor, and he was appointed by his father to stomp out the rebellion carried out by the Jews. This was in about the year 70 AD, where he laid siege for about 7 months. And at the conclusion, and during these 7 months, the Jews had started fighting amongst themselves, and their infighting had resulted in their own food supplies being burnt and destroyed. And that siege became very heavy for them. 7 months later, he barged in and he destroyed everything. He leveled it completely to the ground. So they say that is the second occasion. So there's a little bit of a difference, and there's a few other opinions that are presented. In any case, there's a great deal of history behind each of these instances. Whichever ones you study historically, there's a lot of historical detail. There's a lot of, like I said, biblical detail in this. And why is this being told? It's being told for a couple of reasons. The first is to warn the people of Quraysh that, remember, if you harm your prophets and you turn away from their instructions, don't think that you will be safe. Yes, Makkah has been protected, haraman aminan wa yatakhatafu an-nasu min hawlihim. It is a preserved, a safe sanctuary. People around them are being hurt, but the Meccans are safe. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, He can remove this shield of protection that He has given them. And just like those people were destroyed because of their opposition to their prophets, you will face the same fate. That's one thing. The other thing is the messages to the Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help with you is only as long as you are following the commandments of Allah and the teachings of His Prophet ﷺ, and you're giving those teachings the due respect that they deserve. The moment you start compromising those teachings, and some of those very important teachings come right here in this surah, the moment you start compromising those teachings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help is removed. And in the words of the Prophet ﷺ, جُعِلَ الذِّلَّةُ وَالصَّغَارُ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَ أَمْرِي. Anyone who opposes my instructions, my teachings, then he inadvertently will have to be disgraced and he will have to be belittled and humiliated in the world. So it's a warning to the Muslims as well, indirectly, that look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a lot of things. Yes, you're going through some trials and tribulations. You're going to come out of them like Allah has promised. But those promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are only valid to the extent of your uprightness and your adhering to the rules and the precepts of Deen. So I mentioned this a little bit of detail because a lot of people don't understand what these verses are referring to. Verse 11, human beings sometimes ask for evil just like they ask for good. How is that? They ask for evil when they curse themselves or they curse the things around them. A person curses his family members, somebody curses their children, curses their wife, curses their parents sometimes, curses their life, curses their job, and it is like a prayer that a person is making against himself. And sometimes we don't realize it, but we're actually cursing it. In English, the word damn is used very frequently, very commonly. But what does damnation mean? It is the equivalent of la'nat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're invoking the curse of Allah on that thing that you're saying damned about. So like that, a person doesn't realize it, but they're actually damning themselves. So on one side, a person is making dua for all of these good things, but the other side, they're making dua against themselves. So they're hurting themselves. And some of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how on the Day of Judgment, everyone's book will be placed in front of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, "Iqra kitabak," read your own book. Read your own book. You are enough to be a judge for yourself. You are enough to take account of your own. I mean, it's all very plainly mentioned. You're good and you're bad. Verse 16, one of the signs of the destruction of a nation is that the wealthy and powerful people will start sinning openly. وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَفِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا. they will start sinning openly. And that is a sign that now this society, such and such society, is about to come to an end. When the wealthy people and the powerful people maintain a code of decency and respectability, integrity, then it is a sign that the lower classes are also going to maintain a sense of integrity. Because people, generally speaking, because of their wealth and because of their higher profiles, they tend to be very careful, very protective of their reputation and of things. But when that category of people, when that class of people becomes openly indecent, it means the level of indecency, the level of khabath and fahsh in a society has gone beyond the limits. It's overflowing now. So yes, people's wealth and people's higher positions do keep them in check. It does keep them in check. They don't want to do anything that's going to cause, because there's more embarrassment that they would have to suffer, and there are more liabilities for them. But when they completely lose sight of all of those things, and society is sinning openly and breaking the commands of Allah and becoming indecent, then it is a sign that this society is about to be doomed and destructed. Verses 18 to 21 talk about goals in life. So what are people living for? If a person is living only for this worldly life, then Allah says, I will give him in the short term, ma nasha'u liman nurid, what we want for whom we want. A person who has, for example, only worldly objectives, whether it's wealth, fame, prosperity, enjoyments, luxuries, whatever it is. If a person has only worldly goals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him something in the short term, but it will be what Allah wants to give him, and to the ones that Allah wants to give. Not everyone will get it. But after that, because they did not ever work for the hereafter, it was never one of their objectives, one of their goals, there was nothing for them but the hellfire. But a person who A, aims for akhirah, and B, sa'alaha sa'yaha, does the kind of work that is required for akhirah. It's not that they intend akhirah, but the work that they're doing, all of their efforts, sa'i means effort, exertion, their sa'i is all devoted to dunya. And they say, no, I want akhirah, I just want to please Allah, I just want Jannah, I just want this. But all of their worldly endeavors are indicating worldly pursuits and worldly objectives. No, a person sets akhirah as their objective, and then they work for it, they exert themselves for it. Their life is an interpretation of that, or a manifestation of that. فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ, and provided that they have iman, their efforts, mashkura, will be very well appreciated. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, don't ever judge people or judge the outcome of people based on what you see here in dunya. He says, كُلًّا نُمِدُّ هَؤُلَاءِ وَهَؤُلَاءِ مِنْ عَطَاءِ رَبِّكَ. Those that are working for akhirah, Allah is providing for them as well. And those that are working for dunya, Allah is providing them as well. So don't be deceived. وَمَا كَانَ عَطَاءُ رَبِّكَ مَحْظُورًا. Allah's giving is open. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives very, very openly. He doesn't restrict based on faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't divide wealth based on faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just gives it based on His own decree, based on His own wisdom. So, unzur, look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given some people importance, preference, superiority over others. But remember, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ أَكْبَرُ دَرَجَاتٍ وَأَكْبَرُ تَفْضِيلًا. The disparity or the difference that will appear amongst people in akhirah will be much, much bigger. It will be much more amplified than what you are seeing today. After this is a list of the instructions, the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ. These are those commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given to every prophet. And every sharia and every divine text has had these commandments. Don't worship anyone other than Allah. وَبِالْوَالِدِينِ إِحْسَانًا. Kindness, going out of your way for your parents. That's basically one nice way to interpret the word ihsan. Go out of your way for them. Go beyond what is required of you. And if one of them or both of them reach old age and they are with you, then at that time, in that phase, don't say words of disobedience or words of rejection to them. Don't scold them, because at this age now they themselves will not be so sound in what they do and what they say. Don't scold them, and speak kind, noble words to them, speak gentle words to them, and remain humble for them, and be kind, show mercy to them, and make dua also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on them, like they raised you when you were small. Of course, it was an act of mercy on behalf of the parents that they took care of you. It was that love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside the heart of the mother and father. Taking care of the close relatives, taking care of the poor, the travelers. وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا. Don't squander your wealth. There are two words used in the Quran for misappropriation of wealth. One is israf and the other is tabdhir. Israf means to use more than you need to. The usage is permissible. What you're using it for itself is permissible, but you're using more than you need to. Wudu, for example, it's something that is a religious necessity. It's a rewarding act until a person starts making israf with the water of wudu. Why? إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Allah doesn't like people of israf, even if they're making wudu. So using more than you need to for a permissible thing, this is israf. And tabdhir is just to throw wealth where it does not even need to be spent. To spend it where it does not need to be spent, or worse, to spend it on things that are impermissible. This is tabdhir. So budur being seeds, tabdhir literally meaning like just throwing seeds into a field, scattering the seeds. So people are just basically squandering, they're just throwing their money, literally. People who do so are the brothers of shaitan. And shaitan is very ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how do they become equated with shaitan? Shaitan is ungrateful for the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These people are also ungrateful. That's why they're throwing their money. So it tells us that wealth is a bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It needs to be used and watched very carefully. People come to you for assistance, but you're not able to help them at that time because you in self are in need of the mercy of Allah. Then don't turn people away with harsh words. Turn them away with kind words, with gentle words. May Allah help you. May Allah assist you. May Allah give you ease. And whenever I can do something, I will definitely send them away with kind words. People who come to you in their time of need, don't scold them. فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. And when it comes to your expenditures, don't keep your hands chained to your neck. In other words, don't become so miserly that you're not spending it all even where you have to spend, because you're saying, no, I just can't, my hands are tied. No, spend where you need to spend. But at the same time, وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. Don't open your hands, don't spread your hands out all the way, because the end result of that will be that you will be admonished by people, by those that are dependent on you, and you will regret it. So, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنْفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا وَلَمْ يَقْتُرُوا وَكَانَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ قَوَامًا. When they spend, they don't spend exorbitantly, excessively, and they don't underspend as well in a stingy way. They spend moderately. And everyone's range of moderation is going to vary based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. The moderation of a poor person is going to be different than the moderation of a very wealthy person. For a very, very wealthy person, their range of moderation is going to be a little bit higher. What's average, what's easy, what's not israf for them, but it's in their range, it's in their scope of spending. And a person who has a lower margin to spend with, his range of moderation is going to be different. That moderation will itself create a diversity within the society. So it's not that everyone now should drive the same kind of car, everyone has to wear the same kind of clothes, everyone has to have the exact same kind of food on their table. No, that's not what it means. Everyone's range of moderation will depend on what their income and what their expenditures are, what their capacity is to spend and to earn. The prohibition of killing children out of fear of poverty. The prohibition of approaching zina. So la taqrabu, the Quran says la taqrabu zina, don't even go close to it. It means avoid all of the things that could possibly lead to it. Avoid those situations, those circumstances that could lead to it. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ explained to us that zina is not restricted to that act itself. There is a zina of the eyes, there's a zina of the ears, there's a zina of the tongue, there's a zina of the heart. So a person needs to be very careful of all of these different types of sin. The prohibition of taking someone's life, and if someone is given a chance to take retribution, then they should only do so to the extent of the damage that was done. Being careful about the wealth of orphans, and being particular about fulfilling one's promises and pledges. وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ إِنَّ الْعَهْدَ كَانَ مَسْئُولًا. These things will be questioned on the day of judgment. And in weights and measured, أَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ إِذَا كِلْتُمْ وَزِنُوا بِالْقِسْطَاسِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. To be very equal and fair in weights and measures. This theme is repeated in the Quran. ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. It is better. وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. It is better in terms of its outcome. A person might play with the weights and measures, thinking that, okay, well, if I give him a little bit less than he deserves, then that's more in my pocket. And if I take a little bit more than I'm entitled to, that's a little bit more in my pocket. But the outcome of that is going to be very disastrous, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow that wealth to become a source of happiness or ease or comfort. In fact, that wealth is going to come into the rest of his wealth as a contaminant and contaminate the rest of his wealth, poison the rest of his wealth, and all of his wealth becomes a source of problems for him. So a person has to be very careful. Unjust, unfair, or illegitimate earnings are never ever a source of removal of problems. They're only a cause of problems. لا تقف ما ليس لك به علم. Don't chase after things that you don't know about. Don't delve into things that don't really concern you. If there's something that doesn't really concern you, then don't delve into it. This habit of going and inquiring about every single thing that's happening in every single person's life, or this habit of just wanting to know everything about everyone, or everything that's happening everywhere, or just spending time and learning about things that don't matter. They make no difference to a person's deen or their dunya. These are all those types of pursuits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. Why? Because in these pursuits, a person is using three things. They're using their ears, they're listening, and they're watching. They're looking at something, they're watching, observing something, and they're thinking, they're processing. Allah says all three of these faculties are going to be questioned on the Day of Judgment. How were they used? So better don't use them in things that don't concern them. Don't walk in the world with arrogance, with pride, with your head up high in a haughty fashion, maraha. Stomping on the ground in anger and in pride is neither going to tear the ground, and raising your head up high is not going to make you as tall as the mountains. So these are some of the wisdoms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And of course, it ends again with emphasis on tawheed. Allah says subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have given many different types of advices in this Quran. Sarrafna fi hadha al-Quran, and we've used different means of explaining. Sometimes in a very gentle approach, with love and kindness, telling the rewards of good things, and sometimes in a stern way, sometimes by telling the stories of good people, sometimes the stories of bad people, and giving examples. And many different ways have been used in this Quran. لِيَذَّكَّرُوا. The bottom line is people should take advice from it. And there are some people who will take advice easily from one method, from one approach. There are others that another approach will work quicker. Some people need that warning, that stern warning, to wait to be shaken and awoken. Others need just a gentle reminder, and that's enough for them. Some people take more effect when they hear a story, when they hear an anecdote. It gives a whole picture to them in their mind. Some people need an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used all of those methods. But still, these people that the Quran is speaking to, they're moving further and further away. Then there are there's mention of some things of Tawheed, and how people are deprived. People who reject over and over and over again, ultimately they end up being deprived of the hidayat that lies in this Quran. That's why we should be very careful. Anytime a reminder from the Quran comes to us, we should be very attentive to it, and we should take it extremely seriously, because we don't know that our inattentiveness or negligence of it might result in further doors of hidayat being closed for us. So we need to be extremely careful. So what happened here? إِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا. Ultimately, what happened with these people is a veil is put up. When the Prophet ﷺ is reciting the Quran, a veil is put up. These people cannot really access it. وَجَعَلْنَا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَن يَفْقَهُوهُ. And veils are put over their hearts so that they cannot understand it. وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا. Their ears are made deaf. They wonder how they will be raised after our bones have decomposed and have become just a heap of powder and dust. So how will we be resurrected after that? Allah says, "Kunu hijaratan aw hadida." Forget about decomposed bones. Even if you were to become stone, or if you were to become steel, or the biggest or the most difficult creation that you can think of, even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could resurrect you in a very easy way. So the fact that your body has decomposed and turned to another state, this was their question. that once something has altered to another state, how can it be restored to its previous state? So the flesh is gone, the tissue is gone, the hair is gone, everything is gone, and even these bones now, they become brittle, just crumbles. So now how can all of this be put together again in the form of a living, talking, breathing human being? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not dependent on the states of things. Allah creates the states, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can turn anything into anything. Verse 53 reminds us that always say that which is best. And this is a very challenging thing to implement. That in every circumstance, only say that which is the best. So this compels a person, it forces a person to think before they speak. What is the best what is the best thing to be said on this occasion? And we most of the time we don't do this because we're just caught up in the heat of the moment, and we're just saying whatever, sort of whatever we say. But subhanallah, the Quran wants us to be a little bit wiser. It wants us to take a step back. See, what are we saying? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us one of the warnings. What will happen if we are not on guard? Inna shaytana yanzaghu bainahum. Shaitan is always there to cause trouble between people, between husband and wife, between brothers and sisters, between relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Shaitan is there to use one word of yours, even if you didn't mean it that way, but to be transferred to the other person in a very negative way, and it evokes a very negative reaction from that person. So we need to be extremely careful about what we say, and the Quran gives us one clear guideline: say that which is best. So think that what is the best thing to say, and sometimes one of the ways to check which is the best is, how would I like this to be explained to me? If I needed to be explained this same thing, how would I like it to be explained? And a person, if he exercises this, then it solves a lot of problems for that person and others. Verse 56, 57 talk about Tawheed, how the things that people are calling upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have no control of good or bad. Verse 58 mentions how every settlement, every town, every city will be destroyed before Yawm al-Qiyamah. So before the Day of Judgment starts, everything will be flattened to the ground. Verse 60 again makes reference to that Isra, to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed the Prophet ﷺ, and he went and transferred it to people. People started doubting it, that how is it possible to travel such a distance, within a portion of one night, and so on and so forth. So it was a test for people. Are they going to believe it? Are they not going to believe it? إِلَّا فِتْنَةً لِلنَّاسِ. After this is a brief mention of the story of Adam alayhi salam and Iblis. And Iblis was arrogant. He said, you want me to bow to something that is made of dirt, made of soil? So he made a vow, a pledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I am going to wipe out, I am going to take away all of his progeny, except for maybe a few. Maybe a few people will be saved from me, but watch, I'm going to affect everyone. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, go and take your followers with you, because Jahannam is going to be enough punishment for all of you. And وَاسْتَفْزِزْ مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ مِنْهُمْ بِصَوْتِكَ, and entice whoever you want with your voice. With your voice, what is your voice? Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu mentioned that this refers to music. So what does music incite a person to do? What does entice a person? What are the themes that people are singing about in music? And what kinds of emotions does music run through a person? Are they emotions and feelings of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of sitting down and reading the Quran? Or are they emotions of a different nature? Some drive a person to the brink of ecstasy. They make a person want to move their bodies and sway to it and move around and start dancing and doing all of these things. And the things that are used in music itself, this is something that we have been seeing. I myself have been seeing since I was a child, that people who listen to a certain type of music end up personifying that music. Look at someone, it won't, it's not difficult to see who to discover and observe who probably listens to rap music, and who listens to heavy metal, and who listens to rock and roll, and who listens to what they're personifying it. It manifests itself through them. And the themes that are discussed in music, they are um, they are leading society towards further and further indecency. And another tribulation is that this music is connected with personalities. The music cannot be detached from the personalities. And when people follow the music, they also follow the person who made the music, who presented it, whether it's the singer or whether it's the musician. And then those people have their own lifestyles, and inadvertently their lifestyles start appearing in the lifestyles of those who listen to their music. So whether it's clothing, manner of speaking, even just the way they run their lives. There are so many youngsters, they listen to rap music so much that they start believing that they themselves are a gangster, and they start going and living out that song that's playing in their mind. It's a reality, I'm telling you. They're out there reenacting everything that those lyrics are telling them about. Allahu Akbar. So it is one of the arsenal, it is one of that armory of shaitan. Ajlib alayhim bi khaylik, okay, use all your power and your strength. Sharikum fil amwali wal awladi wa'idhum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave shaitan the ability to join us in our wealth and join us in our children, to partake in our wealth and to partake in our children. That's a very frightening thing. So it means that shaitan can be included in a person's earnings. Why? The way he earns them, shaitan can mislead him. The intention that he earns them for, the intention that he spends them with. And if haram comes in, like I said, haram is that contaminated matter that once it comes in, it infects and contaminates everything. So this is how shaitan joins us in our wealth, by allowing haram earnings or doubtful earnings, impermissible earnings. And in our awlad, in different ways, shaitan himself makes direct attacks on our children, puts things in their minds. Hadith mentioned that the crying of the child when it is born, it's because shaitan immediately comes and starts poking him and starts bothering him. And shaitan sometimes uses our children against us and uses them as vehicles to transfer shar into our house, trials and tribulations in our house. So it's something to be very, very careful of. So we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection in our wealth and in our children. The Prophet ﷺ has taught us these du'as. So when we are particular about the du'as, the morning and evening du'as that the Prophet ﷺ taught us, then we become protected from all of these effects and influences in our lives. However, at no point does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give complete control of a person to shaitan. Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. You don't have any control over them. You can whisper, you can play around and you cause trouble, but at no point can you control them and make them do something. After this are some more dalail of tawheed, the nature of the human being, how he's turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his darkest moment, when he has no one and nothing, such as when they're in that ocean and on that ship and there is nothing, waves crashing all around them. Then who do you turn to? You turn to one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do people turn to science? People appeal to science. Oh, science, help us. People who believe in evolution theory, oh, evolution theory, come and save us. So at that time they turn to the highest being that's out there, the highest being. And ultimately, because it's in the fitrah of the human being, the highest being that controls everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People should be very careful about who they follow, because on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call people based on their leaders. يَوْمَ نَدْعُو كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. Every group of people, every nation of people will be called based on their leader. And we're not talking about political leaders. We're talking about who you took as your leader. Who are you following? Who was your model? Who was your example? So if your model and example was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he was your imam, then you will be raised with him and under his banner. And if you took someone else, if you put aside some of the ways of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for someone else, you compromise those for someone else, then that person is your imam. Their ways, their lifestyle, their preferences, or their teachings became more important to you than the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why we should even be careful about, taking the names of, or quoting the names of those who disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly, even as references. We should be very, very careful. We should not do it unless we absolutely have to. Because we don't, at the end of the day, we turn to Allah and we turn to His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the source of our knowledge and our information. Those on the Day of Judgment who are given their book in their right hand, they will be reading their books. They will be very happy. But those who are blind in this world, they will be blind in Akhirah. فَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ أَعْمَى وَأَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. They will be even lost, even more lost. So people who lived in confusion here, they didn't make the right decisions to take them to the path of guidance. They're going to be even more confused in Akhirah, even more bewildered. It will be one of the punishments of Akhirah, the bewilderment and the utter confusion that they're having to go through. There's mention of how people are trying to dissuade the Prophet ﷺ from the instructions given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds him that it is the tathbeet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you firm. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you strong. If it were not for that, لَقَدْ كِدْتَ تَرْكَنُ إِلَيْهِمْ شَيْئًا قَلِيلًا. Even you would be slightly inclined towards them. Just to win them over, or just to bring them closer, or just to open up avenues of da'wah, you may be inclined towards them, maybe accepting a couple of their terms here and there. But if you were to do that, then even you would not be exempted from the punishment of Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives these people the warning that there are some people that are trying to expel you from here, but they should know one thing: إِذَنْ لَا يَلْبَثُونَ خِلَافَكَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. They themselves will not last here very long if that happens, when that happens. So what happened after the Prophet ﷺ migrated? In Badr, most of their chieftains and their leaders and heroes were destroyed, were finished, or enslaved, taken as captives. And after that, further wars took place. More of their people were killed. They were inflicted by famine and drought, like I talked about yesterday, and they suffered great losses, great damages, and at the end, they either accepted Islam or they lost their lives. Verses 78 to 79 talk about some of the timings of Salat. أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ إِلَى غَسَقِ اللَّيْلِ. Quran is a shifa and rahmah for believers. It only increases the harm, the damage, and the losses of the zalimeen. Why? Because there are more instructions that they don't carry out. It's a greater loss for them. Human being, when he is favored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he neglects everything and just goes off on his own way. And when he is inflicted by harm, he becomes hopeless and he despairs, he goes into depression. So this is one of the things of the nature of the human being. قُلْ كُلٌّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِلَتِهِ فَرَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ هُوَ أَهْدَى سَبِيلًا. You think you are right, we believe that we are right. Let everyone goes and practices on their own pattern. Allah knows who is guided and who is not. They ask you about the ruh. They ask you about this soul, this spirit within the human being. This was one of the questions that was posed by the Jews, and the people of Makkah were told to ask the Prophet ﷺ this question. And this leads us into the next surah, Surah Al-Kahf as well. There were 3 questions that they posed. One was, what is the ruh? And the second was, who are those young men that went into the cave? And what is their story? And secondly, who is that king who traveled from the east of the world to the west of the world? So tell us about them. So they came and they posed these questions to the Prophet ﷺ. So one answer is given in this surah, and the answers for the next 2 questions are given in Surah Al-Kahf. So they ask you about the ruh. What is this ruh? So tell them, Ar-ruhu min amri rabbi. It is from a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or it is from the affairs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no one other than Allah knows. So either it is a result, it is a product of the command of Allah. Allah said kun, and it became. Or it is from amr in the sense of it is from the affairs, it is from the matters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has kept to Himself and has not divulged to anyone. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. All the knowledge that you have been given is very less indeed. So the soul has not come from any worldly or earthly substance. It has not come from anything concrete, any concrete substance or matter that we know of. It does not consist of matter. It consists of a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a life essence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Only He knows the reality of it. Only He knows the actual, the haqiqah of it, of how it comes into existence and what happens to it. Challenges that the people of Quraysh presented: we won't believe in you until you give us rivers, or you have gardens, orchards of palm groves and of vineyards, and you have streams running everywhere, or you give us warnings of the punishment of Allah, bring the adab of Allah, let the sky fall on our heads, or show us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His angels face to face, or you should have a house that's made out of gold, or you should have a ladder and climb up into the sky. And this trip that you're telling us about, this Isra, we're not going to believe you until a book comes down from the sky that tells us about it. قُلْ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّي, Subhanallah. What kind of, illogical and unreasonable types of, irrational types of comments and suggestions these are. هَلْ كُنْتُ إِلَّا بَشَرًا رَسُولًا. I am a mortal and I am a prophet of Allah. That's all I know. Then they have a problem with this as well. أَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ بَشَرًا رَسُولًا. And why is Allah sending a mortal? Well, tell them that if the whole world was filled with angels walking around, يَمْشُونَ مُطْمَئِنِّينَ, walking around very easily, then angels would have been sent as their prophets. But the world is filled with human beings, so they need human beings as prophets. My hidayat comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After this, some of the miracles of Musa alayhi salam are mentioned, and brief mention of an exchange between him and Fir'aun. And Bani Israel was told that uskunu al-ard fa idha jaa wa'd al-akhirati ji'na bikum lafifa. You will be allowed to live here in the world, but remember, when akhirah comes, then we are going to gather all of you. Yani that is your time. Prepare for akhirah, live for akhirah. So this is a summary of this surah. It ends with instructions to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. What should we call him? Should we call him by Allah? This is something the Quraysh said. Sometimes you call him Allah, sometimes you call him Rahman. He has so many names. Call him by Allah, call him by Rahman. أَيًّا مَا تَدْعُوا. Whichever one you call. فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all of the beautiful names. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all of these beautiful names. After this is Surah Al-Kahf, and the beginning of the surah is devoted to the importance of the Quran, the pattern of the Quran. It is qayyiman. This book is an overlooker over all the other books, and it is also an upright book. Qayyiman. It is completely upright. Everything in it is upright. Lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. There is nothing crooked. There is nothing deviant about this book. And then there is some mention of akhirah. After that, the story of Ashabul Kahf is mentioned. I'm not going to go into the details of the story. We just finished a tafsir of this surah just before Ramadan. So the whole story of Ashabul Kahf is mentioned. A reminder to the Prophet ﷺ that don't say about anything that I'm going to do that tomorrow unless you also say inshallah. When those people came and asked the Prophet ﷺ these three questions, he said, I will tell you tomorrow. Come to me tomorrow and I will tell you. But he forgot to say inshallah. So the wahi was delayed by many days. So people started mocking him, and it became a whole uproar in the community that, oh, he told them the next day, but his shaitan, they thought it was a jinn coming to him. His shaitan hasn't come to him. Even his shaitan has discarded him. Al-iyadu billah. So this was an experience that the Prophet ﷺ was made to have, so that he remembers that always entrust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all your affairs and leave it in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The people of the cave, they lived there for 309 lunar years. And that whole story became actually a source of inspiration for the king that came 3 centuries later, who was trying to convince his people to believe in akhirah, and they were resisting that. They were refusing to believe in that. When these young men came out of the cave, it became an open lesson, something of a miracle in front of their own eyes, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put them to sleep for 3 centuries and wake them up, and they're still safe and sound, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have no difficulty in resurrecting us after we have died. And this story, all the miraculous things that happen with Ashab al-Kahf, it tells us that a person has to sometimes take the courageous step of standing up for their deen and standing up for what they believe in, and allow the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to follow them. The help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does come. These boys were not prophets. They were just good, pious, practicing Muslims, but they were very firm in their belief. And the tests did come, and they did end up having to even leave their hometown, which happens to be, in fact, Amman, where Amman, Jordan is today. And that cave is just on the outskirts of Amman. But after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used them for such a great work, and their story has been preserved in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people, especially youngsters, should not despair. They should not fall weak in their resolve to practice deen and remain steadfast. These youngsters, qamu, they stood up in the face of the king. فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. They announced very openly that our Lord is the one who created all of this. We're not going to call on anyone, so we're not going to change our deen. This has to be the slogan of the Muslims today, that we will not compromise our deen for whether it's Western values, whether it's trends of the world, whether it's being browbeaten into this whole, extremism, terrorism discussion. No matter what people say, no matter what position they put you in, they want to make you feel like a fundamentalist. They want to make you feel like an extremist. They want to make you feel like someone who's intolerant. They want to make you feel like you're narrow-minded. They want to make you feel like you're prejudiced. They want to make you feel like you're not open. They might want to make you feel like you're not Canadian. Whatever, no matter what position they put you in, you have to stand firm and show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are resolute as a mu'min, as a believer. And that's one lesson that we learn from the story of Ashab al-Kahf. The worldly life is very short. That is displayed. There's a story of two people, either a believer and a disbeliever, or a practicing person, a non-practicing person. The practicing person, the pious person, was put through some hard times. He lost whatever his wealth he had, and the other person was given a lot of money, and he had a garden, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it. It's a set of two gardens, and there are rivers, and they're surrounded by these groves, and there's crops in between. It's got everything. And this person is being very arrogant and very overconfident that, look, I have this and this and this. If you had any good in you, then you would have had this. And this is never going to finish. I'm always going to have this. And if I die, even if I am resurrected, then I'm going to get something even better than this. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His punishment down and wiped out everything that person had. There was mention of akhirah here. Then there's mention of the story of the angels, Adam alayhi salam, and then Iblis. Some discussion on those people who refuse to believe, why they refuse to believe. And then there's a story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. And inshallah we will talk about this tomorrow under the discussion of the 16th juz. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi.